want to start recording and then there it is.
Let's do it.
Awesome. I'll start sharing my screen. Great. All right, everybody. So we have a blank file here. I'm inside a folder called demo, and all I did was clone this repository over so that I could have the information that we have here. So it looks like we're working with some JSON files and also working with a little bit of OOP that needs to go into the models. So I'll start the setup while Wyatt's going to be navigating. So he'll be breaking down more of the thought process, and I'll just kind of be coding what his thoughts are. And yeah, so at this point, Wyatt, you could take over and break down the thought process why I do this whole installment of the virtual environment and Django itself.
Sure. So let's start with the virtual environment. Does anyone have any questions about virtual environments still? I know we've talked a lot about them, but they're like, I still get really confused about them. So what's going on here? Can anyone help me out?
So when I did my virtual environment, I kind of took Zainab's advice and put it in a more central location. But let's see, hold on, I made some pretty detailed notes of how to set it up because I knew I'd forget. I guess first thing you want to do is get to whatever directory you want to create your environment in.
Mm-hmm.
And then do, where is it at? Python -m and then venv. And then whatever you want your environment name to be.
Yep. So just like Francisco just did.
Oh yeah, sorry, I wasn't. No.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, and then yeah, he's good. Source, yeah, environment bin activate to that's how you get into your environment.
Yep. So now you can see on his terminal it says environment on the left side there. So that means we've activated the virtual environment, and now we're working within the virtual environment. All right, and then he just used pip to install Django, and he's installing it within the virtual environment so that his other Django projects, which may be using different versions of Django or have other dependencies associated with them, that way there's no conflict between those other projects because they're all stored within their own virtual environments. Now he's just started the project. So we have school roster is that's the project folder. And you can see it has a manage.py and then another folder within that. And now we start our app.
Would I know it's not really necessary for this demo, but would this be the point where you would do the like pip freeze and then put that on a requirements.txt, or would you do that before you started the environment?
So you would do the pip freeze within the environment. And I think you can
I'm sorry, the project is, yeah, what I meant.
Yeah, I think you can do it after you've started. I don't think whether or not the project is started matters for that.
Okay.
Because that's just
so on that
the versions of Django and of Python that you're using. All right, so now we have our project, we have our app, and the app is called School App. So he's adding that into the project settings file so that the project knows that this app is associated with the project. Okay. So we have the URL to the project URL patterns list, which is just going to let the user, at the base URL is going to direct it to our school app.
Yeah, so just like you said, this is telling it, hey, look in school apps and look in the URLs file in school apps, right? Your application won't have a URLs file, so you have to manually create it. I used the terminal command to create that URLs file. And now I could grab that, move over to my URLs file, and commit it. Awesome. So right there, I just import views, and then I'm telling it that in this path, I want it to render or actually use this view that I'm utilizing, right? But that view doesn't exist at this time, so I'm just going to go ahead and create a manual view.
And because that the URL he put was the empty string, this is going to be like the base view.
I had a question for the request argument there. Does that have to be labeled request for the Django program, or can it be any argument you want as far as wording?
I think you can name it anything, but I believe like an instance method or a class method where you use self or CLS, it's just like a standard that you always use request.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so now I'm just going back to my base folder that's actually holding my managed PY file, requirements, my school application, and my actual project. And here's where I'm going to try to shoot my project at this point. Okay, awesome. So I can't welcome my program because we send that HTTP response. Awesome. So now the project's actually set up and it's running, or at least that's what we know. So now we could actually start working with some of the things that got shared with us and start moving some stuff around.
Anyone have any questions so far?
Okay, awesome. So now I'll actually start moving these models and manipulating the data. Gonna clean some of this stuff up real quick. So we have this entire persons class, and we won't need OS for any of that stuff above. Then I need my staff. I'll need my student. And lastly, I'll need my school.
I believe for this step, the order here does matter because I think school uses staff and student, and then staff and student both inherit from person. So I think the order that he has is, you could switch staff and student around, but other than that, the order is important.
All right, great. So I'm sure everybody saw this. I keep getting this error message down below. That's just simply because I never applied the migrations. So I'm just going to do that now. Okay, great. Now I could run server without having a problem. Awesome. So now that's working correctly, but now the next problem that we're seeing, technically I won't need any of that. I'll need to recreate this function. right? So now to recreate that function, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the JSON reader at this point. Um, that's a good one. I think I'm gonna move this class method over to each individual class. What do you think? What?
Yes. Yeah, I don't think you have to, but I think might make things more clear.
Then in this case, I'm doing staff, and then I'm gonna use open. Then we should go. Ooh, okay. So now this is where I need to move the actual data, right? So I'm gonna grab the data and move that into my school application. That way I can actually use it. Okay, awesome.
Did you import JSON?
I don't think so. Let me do that one real quick. Okay, awesome. So JSON's in, then
Does anyone have any questions about JSON files?
The only question I had was when I was doing research on loading the JSON file, I noticed there was a JSON.load and a JSON.loads plural. Do you happen to know what the difference between those two are?
God, it's funny you say that. I've actually run into that before and I forget the exact difference. I remember looking it up also. I think one of them maybe returns it and the other just loads it. Let me check that out. I remember the names are not great. Okay, so load reads the JSON from the JSON file and then loads with the plural converts that JSON into a dictionary in Python.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then yeah, so that's just how you can. I think loads basically can just do like in one step, which what load can do in you need two steps too, where you'd have to load it and then convert it. I think loads does both in one step.
that was close. I almost misnamed that one. Okay, awesome. Then this one is student. So student data. All I'm basically doing is recreating the same exact function that I did above. All students. Okay. Awesome. That should clarify that. And it should be creating the instances correctly. Okay. Great. Anyone got any questions thus far? Okay. Awesome. So that should be it for our models. That should set everything up as far as unpacking the JSON files and creating each individual instance. So now I'll go ahead and move into some of the the Django stuff.
Real
So
quick,
now-
for the class school, you're still calling the function like, I can't remember what it was on yours, but okay, load all. So that's the function you have to load the JSON files. Okay,
yes.
cool.
Yeah, I made sure that they kept the same name. I think Luis has his hands up as well.
Yeah.
What's up, Luis?
Yeah, I got a question. What's the difference between models PY and views PY? Like, I don't understand why you put all of that in models instead of views.
Yeah, so models are actually made to create something that will actually interact with the database. That's the point of models. For this specific exercise, we're kind of not touching databases yet. So instead, we're using OOP inside of our models document. But models will be something that you'll utilize to actually interact with the database later on. I'm not sure if you want to jump in this question, Zainab, since I'm probably not explaining it to the best of the ability. Okay, great.
I can
Yeah.
maybe expand on that a little.
for it.
So usually the way that Django works with a database is you define models and with classes, and then each class is corresponds to a like a SQL database. So all the data would be stored in the database. The class is the database definition. So like, you know, in the student class, the database would have a column for each attribute. So like it would have a student ID column, and I guess name column, etc. And then one row would be one student. And we're kind of just not using a database, and we're sort of pretending that these JSON files are the database. So it's like a little bit of a hack to not have to actually use a database for this. And then as far as what you were asking about, as for why we don't do this in views, it's just an organizational decision. So models is kind of how we structure the data that we're working with, and how we, you know, name the attributes and kind of define our syntax. And then within views, that's where we're going to actually like work with that data that we've defined and pass it to the front end to be displayed for the user.
Okay, so
So
now
models
moving
is-
into, go for it.
I'm sorry. Some models is like where you handle all the data and stuff, and then views is like where you can interact with it and like put them in the front end, display them basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now I made a folder called templates. Inside of templates, I made a folder called pages. And then inside that pages directory, I made a file index.html where I could just copy and paste this right here real quick. All right. And then it looks like this will be the last thing I need. All right. And then now I got my URL patterns. Awesome. And if I check this, it says that my local host is running correctly. So I go check my local host and it's running. So we got the Django school directory, all staff. So before I actually go into that function for all staff, I'm going to go into my index. I see that it's going to that URL path, all staff. I could go to my URLs, or was it list of staff?
I think it's
list
list, yeah.
Yeah, so now it's using list staff, so I know it's going into the views of list staff. So now I go views, and list of staff is not using anything. Okay, great. So then I'll just fix that up real quick. So I know that I'm going to need the data to be transferred. And I know that what I'm going to be transferring is going to be staff. And it should be my school dot. Let me take a look. Dot staff that I should be calling. All right, great. Now I'm gonna return, render. I know I'll need request. I need to create a template called HTML, and I need to pass into it data. So in here, I create a template, all staff HTML.
Does anyone have any questions about how the URL works with Django and these HTML files? Yeah, what's up?
So pretty much right when you copy and pasted that HTML page or the HTML to your index.html page, and you went to load your web page, the links showed up right away. Like the all staff and all student.
Yeah.
When I did mine, I kept getting an error saying that it wasn't valid, and I'm not exactly sure why. I kind of just went around it by just doing just adding the directory basically to the other page. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure why it didn't work for me right off the bat.
Yeah,
But
so those links are there because they were defined in index.html. But I don't think that they didn't lead to anything until.
yeah, correct. But yeah, like I went and copied like all that to my index.html, and as soon as I went to just load the homepage, it gave me an error saying that list staff was not found. So that's why I kind of worked around it, but I was just kind of curious that that's what you guys got right off the bat.
I maybe would have to
Yeah, we would have to take a
look
look
at
at
your
exactly
code,
how
but
your
Yeah,
URLs
that's
would
the
be
problem. Maybe
formatted.
somebody could take a look at it later and see.
Yeah.
That's fine.
you can definitely do that. If I had to guess, it was probably like Francisco just like implemented a file before he copied and pasted that index.html. But yeah, if we take a look at your code, we can probably figure it out.
Okay.
Okay, so just real quick, I want to make sure that we're all understanding what's going on here. So I'm going into list of staff, right? I'm establishing this dictionary that's using the key of staff to pass in a list holding all the staff members. And then after that, I'm telling it that upon request, I want it to render inside of pages, my all staff.html. And then I'm going to pass into that template the data or the dictionary, right? So now I go in here and I'm creating a for loop, and this staff member is technically just a variable. It doesn't mean anything, right? I'm creating it myself. So I'm saying for staff member in staff, and staff is the key that we used here to access that list that's being passed in the dictionary. And then after that, I'm creating in that for loop, I'm saying you're gonna make a list item with a staff member, right? So if everything goes correct, if I click on all staff, I get each individual staff using their dunder method. Does everybody get that one? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, awesome. So with that said, could I get somebody to guide me on how to do the list of students in that case?
I can
Sure.
try.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, no, Brian, you go for it, man. I was just doing just in case nobody wanted to do it.
All right. I mean, getting a list of students, essentially it'll be the same thing as getting a list of staff. So
Okay.
you're gonna want to go to your views page and create your variable data, and then create a dictionary, and then just do students colon myschool.student. And then below that you go return render request, and then your path. And then data after that.
Okay, that's awesome. And then I'll copy that, close this out, and I'm just going to create a new file. All right, what needs to change here?
The for loops and the title as well. Yeah.
Okay, so change that to students, and then what I need to change it.
And then for, I guess, student member and student.
And then did we call it student or students?
That's a good question.
Students with a nice, I believe.
Okay, yep.
Student member in students. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so technically that should work. So let's see. I'll refresh it, and now we got all of our students there. Okay, great, easy peasy. So now comes the next step, where we see each individual detail of a member and staff, and each individual detail of a member with student. So if I look at my URL paths, I see that all I need to do is go to this URL and add that employee ID in there, right? So now I'm just gonna go to my all staff templates. I know that this should be an anchor tag at this point. And now I'm gonna establish the href. Okay, so now we go, I believe it's, let me pull it up side by side. Okay, so it looks like it's staff, and then we need staff member dot ID or employee ID. And I think I may need, oh, nope. I think I may need an extra pair of curly brackets, right, Wyatt?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I'll check that out. Go into all staff. Okay. Oh, I think I forgot. Oh no. Let's see. If I click on that, it says page not found. So it looks like it's going into two staffs. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and erase that staff from there. I refresh it. Okay. So add staff 869 view details didn't return anything. Okay, awesome. But we know that the link is working. So now
Does anyone
I
have
can
any
go-
questions on how that that HTML, how that works? Cool.
All right. So now I go into staff details. And I should probably pull up my models side by side. All right. So it looks like we have a couple of methods here that we can utilize. We have find staff by ID and find student by ID. So that's great. So I know I'm grabbing that from the request. Oh, sorry. I know I'm grabbing that from the request. So now I can do data, staff detail, and that would be my school dot find staff by ID, and then here we use the employee ID. Okay. Awesome. And now I can return, render, again, request, and now we'll do pages slash individual staff HTML, or actually we'll just call it individual person. And then that way we could use the same template for both staff and student. Data. Okay, great. So now I need to create a new template. And I believe I called it individual person HTML. And what was that over here? Staff detail. Okay, great. So I go, I refresh it, I click on there, and it gives me the same thing, but I'm pretty sure that's not what we're looking for. So let's see what the individual staff is actually supposed to give me. Does anyone remember by any chance what individual staff is supposed to show us here? Okay, well then we'll just run the details then. Let's look at the model. If I look at staff, I know staff has all of these things. So let's do UL, LI. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like staff is just supposed to show all the data, except the password, I assume.
Awesome. So in that case, go ahead. All right, so here, let's say I want age. I want role. Employee ID. And it doesn't seem like there's really nothing else, so I'll do name. Okay, awesome. Go back, refresh it, boom. All right, and then if I want to make it kind of, I could just do age. And okay, awesome. So now I'll check to make sure that it works with everybody else. Cool, so that's working correctly. So now we could do the same thing, but we do it for student. But before we do that, we want to use the same template for both, all right? So let's change this to detail. And in here, in our view, we also have to change that to detail. All right. Does anybody want to walk me through student details? Garrett, what do you think? You want to take a chance at it?
Try.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so we want to collect data, so data variable. And then under that detail, I guess we could do the same thing.
Right.
You could do my school dot. What's your method for? Is it find student by ID as well?
Let's see.
Sorry.
Looks like it's fine.
Okay.
Right.
So find student by ID. And then you'll just do student. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Then you do your render or return your render. So your request. And then your HTML. So for this one, we're going to put in the same HTML then, or
Yes.
utilize the same. Okay. So then that would just be indiv person. And then we want to return our data or have data in there.
Okay. Awesome. So technically that should work. So let's see what that will do. So we're going to all students. Oh, we haven't fixed something here. So let's take a look here. We're going to all students. And I don't think we need to have them on two things anymore. So we'll just do that.
Who knows?
Awesome.
Who knows what we have to add here? Who's got an idea?
You have to add an A tag.
Nice. And then what link do we want that A tag to point to?
We want it to point to our student HTML page. Whatever that one's called, I can't remember. Student detail.
Yeah, so we want to enter the URL that points to that exactly.
Okay. So what would go in your, let's see, Hazan?
So you would have your student member dot ID or no dot, I think it's student ID or something. Or I think it might be school ID.
Let me check real quick. So
I think it's
going
school
to
ID.
Models. We got student, yep, school ID. Okay, awesome. So let's see, I refresh it, I click it, ID isn't showing up. Anybody got an idea why?
Yeah, because you're not, it's taking in the employee ID for that page instead of student ID.
Awesome. So how could we fix that and still use the same template?
Make or change the variable for employee ID and make them the same, I guess.
We could do that, but if we
Or
were to
do-
change the variable,
If statement would probably be.
Conditional.
okay. So I do if, and then detail, employee ID, we'll do that. Else. we do school ID. And then and if. Okay, let's see what that does. Great. Does everybody understand this if, else, and then if statement? Awesome, great. So now I can go to all staff and then I'll make sure all staff is still working. So all staff is working, all students is working. All right, so now let's check the requirements to make sure that we did everything we needed to do. So we got our homepage, we got the list of all staff, the list of all students, we got the staff detail page and the student detail page. Everything is accomplished and the project is done. Awesome, guys. I guess at this point, if you guys have any questions, please ask us so that we could address them one by one over how the project went.
So I jumped in a little late, but for the CSV file, so do we load in the CSV file into the project and then convert them over to JSON? Or how did that work for the actual student and employee data?
So for that portion, what I ended up doing was I grabbed the data files out from the cloned repo and I dropped them inside my actual Django project. Well, I actually dropped them inside my application, right? So there's data and then I got JSON and student JSON. Then I went into my models and originally this load all model is inside of person, but you would have to do some conditionals to be able to run this just inside of person because the address or the path to the individual thing would change, right? So for simplicity's sake, I created the method in each one of them, one in student and one in staff. Then from there, you use the open function, where you establish the path, and then you use JSON load to turn it into a dictionary. And then after that, you just iterate through the dictionary and create an instance like we would in the CSV file.
So JSON is a lot like CSV, where we can use it to load the data from a JSON file and then work with it in Python.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense.
Anyone else have any
Awesome.
questions?
Yeah, I've got one real quick. Could you kind of go over how you were able to implement that string dunder method into the HTML file?
Okay, yeah, so the dunder method is going to get triggered anytime we call an instance that has already occurred in this class, right? So I don't have to actually like tell it to call dunder method. All I have to do is call the individual instance. So if I go to all staff here, I iterate through the array, right? And then I print out these things. But if I were to just, let's see, up here, do staff. So if I were to do that, technically it should show me an entire, yeah. Okay, for some reason that's already referencing it in its dunder method file, but it should have been the objects inside there. Why, do you know by any chance why the dunder method is being triggered here?
I don't think the dunder method's being triggered there. I think that's because you define the data in
I think the dunder method's under the student class.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just because that's what you pass in for data.
So in my views. Okay, list of staff. No, I'm just throwing in the actual list. But it looks like when it goes into the HTML file, it will trigger the dunder method automatically.
Let's throw a print statement on like right above where you define data, and let's just print myschool.staff. See what happens.
Okay, go to staff,
So it looks like
right there.
where's your list?
To students, I mean staff, load all. And then when I go over to staff, load all. Yeah. It
Huh.
should just be showing them instances, but it looks like HTML is just automatically triggering it, or it might be because it's coming from a JSON file. That's my other concern about it. Oh, Zainab's in the call. Zainab, by any chance, do you have any idea why
What
this
was the
is
question?
Dunder? So we're seeing the Dunder method being triggered, while even though I'm not calling the individual instance.
Which Dunder method is being
The one for staff.
the yeah, I haven't really
Representation
used-
method.
Yeah, I haven't really used the representation method.
I think
Let me-
representation
Let's
works
see.
even with a list of objects. Is that the difference?
I wonder. Let me see. Oh yeah. So if you use the representation, that's really interesting. So if you use representation, it will show each one of them. But if you change it into the Dunder method, it messes it up. Oh no, I forgot what is it just RPR?
Or EPR?
There you go.
Yeah, we can check the documentation on that too.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just looking it up.
Awesome. Does that kind of clear things up, Brian?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the reason I didn't get it on my side is because I kind of printed off all the names wrong on my index page. So I think that's why I didn't get the Dunder.
Oh.
So
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, anyone else got anything?
I have a question.
Send it.
What exactly does the class method decorator do again?
Okay, so the class method decorator is saying that this function, it belongs to the class and not an instance, right? So in school, you see how none of these are class methods? So since none of those were class methods, when we actually go into our views, we have to create an instance of school. And because we were created an instance of school, we were able to use those methods, right? But then if we go back to the model, school calls load all, the load all methods, but we technically don't have a existing instance as of now. So instead we call the class and then we use the class to call those methods. So that's what the add class method does. It makes it so that the class can call the method and not an instance. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Cassie, you got any notes? She snuck in here on us.
Oh, hi. I'm just watching.
Oh, okay.
I'm learning this too.
Yeah, and definitely keep the questions coming, because I'm sure people that aren't here when they're watching this recording, they might have questions that that you guys also have. Anything else?
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming, guys. I really appreciate you, and thanks for everybody that helped. I hope this was constructive for you guys. If you guys end up having a question later on that you guys want to bring up, please, you can either hit any one of the TAs up on Slack or myself or Wyatt, and then I'll make sure to push these notes over to the notes and demos repo.
And we'll get this video uploaded today or tomorrow.
awesome. I appreciate you guys doing the walkthrough. It definitely helped out a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure, of
100%. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.
No problem at all, guys.